Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this short video, I'm going to talk to you about a product that's really popular with our customers. It's called Data Strategy in a Box. I'm going to explain what it is, why you need a data strategy, and crucially, the business benefits for you and your organization. And don't forget guys, if you find these videos useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. New videos coming soon. Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk you through at a high level what our data strategy in a box offering looks like, why you need a data strategy, how we approach that problem, and help provide you with the guidance and roadmap that you need to be able to extract maximum value from your data assets. So you don't need me to tell you that data now is everywhere, and a lot of organizations now are really starting to struggle over the years with the proliferation of data. Technology is changing constantly to try to keep pace and innovate and create new tools to help simplify what is really quite a complex environment, which I see in many of the clients that I work with. A lot of the larger organizations that have been around for some time have a range of legacy systems, data scattered across them, and they're really struggling to bring it all together in the cloud. They've then got to cope with data that isn't structured in nature, so it's either semi-structured like XML or JSON, and arriving into the organization on a near real-time basis via event messages or streaming from things like IoT devices or sensors, or even unstructured data like PDF files, for example, or emails. All of this data needs to be consumed and ingested, ideally into a central data platform. And some people refer to that as a data lake. That could also be something like Snowflake that can play the role of a data lake as well as providing data warehouse functionality. But ultimately, a lot of clients that I deal with want that data to be centralized so they make it easier to manage and they get greater economy of scale, as well as being able to protect those data assets and maximize the amount of value they can extract from it. And I really like this quote on the right hand side of the slide here, which says that many companies were data rich and information poor, and little has changed. And I would agree with that sentiment, that there's data everywhere. And this was what coined the term big data, essentially, because you had data arriving from lots of different places at all different frequencies, all different shapes and sizes. So storing that data was one thing and getting it into a platform, which was the most immediate challenge. But then deriving insights, tangible insights from that data, and being able to take action on those insights to help support the business objectives is really challenging today, and it was really challenging then. So imagine you were planning a journey from London in England and the UK to Edinburgh in Scotland. And there's a number of different ways and mechanisms you could get there. Typically, most people would look for the most direct route and a balance between cost and time. So one way you could do that would be to take car, and you could take the most direct route you could whilst avoiding any roadworks and blockages. That gets you from point A to point B as quickly and as efficiently as you can. Alternatively, you could choose to take a train. Again, opting to taking the most direct route, certain advantages to taking the train over a car, but again, we're looking to get there in the quickest way possible, avoiding extra time and expense in getting there. What very few people would want to do would be to choose a route like this. And on this route, we take the scenic route. We go from London to Wales, back into England, and whilst we're at it, we go over to Ireland as well. And so you can see here a journey that should take between 5 and 6 hours, either by train or by car, now takes 29 hours. It takes a lot of additional time, a lot of expense. Very few people would choose that route if you laid those options out in front of them. But ironically, this is what we see with our clients that don't have a data strategy. They take one decision and they spend some money going in this direction, and because of lack of clarity over where they're going and what they're trying to achieve, they don't actually realize their final destination needs to be up here at Edinburgh. They'll make another decision which kind of takes them off on another tangent, and they'll spend money, time and effort doing something else. So having a vision of where you want to get to, defined objective and finish point, as well as a roadmap where you can get from your starting point where you are today to your target destination, spending the least amount of time, hassle and frustration and money. Nobody in their right mind would choose to take this route. Everybody would look to take one of these routes. And that is why investing some time upfront in getting your vision and objectives down on paper, understanding what those high value ticket items are, laying those out on a roadmap in a sequenced way allows you to get from where you are today in London to Edinburgh in the fastest, quickest way. And so when we work for our customers to help develop a data strategy or refresh an existing one, we try to look at that from multiple perspectives. Firstly, we take a backward-looking view. We take a look at what the business knows is critical to understand, what information they just absolutely have to get their hands on. Any initiatives which they've tried before and hasn't worked properly. Why hasn't it worked? Would it work today? Would it work in the future? And crucially, what prevents people in the business being able to deliver to their customers, whether they be internal or external? What challenges or constraints do that person and their teams have that they have to work within that doesn't allow them to do their job with data effectively? Next, we focus on today, so the current state. What works well and what doesn't? And what could be improved? Where are those high value opportunities and quick wins? And I'll describe in a couple of slides' time how we understand this in a very short amount of time. We can turn up to a customer with very little background and context in terms of how their organization works, and quite often that is the case. We need to get this information out of people as quickly as we can so we can start adding value by helping identifying those key use cases and where those quick wins may lie. Then finally, a future-looking view. So where do we want to go? What does good look like for a particular organization? No two customers are the same. And again, it depends on the starting point. It has to be realistic. It has to be in proportion with the organization, the scale of it, the number of people, the amount that you want to invest. How risk averse are you? All those things play a factor in where that future target state ends up. How do you want to track that progress over time? So the data strategy needs to be standardized and repeatable to a point, because you can conduct that assessment again and again to demonstrate improvement. And that's a really good conversation to have with the C-level and the execs and senior leadership teams, because then you can show real tangible progress and business value based upon the time and investment that you've made. So hitting certain milestones along your data journey, and going back to a map and journey analogy, that allows you to ensure that you're on the correct course and you're moving in the right direction towards your future or target state. Early on in our engagement, we try to engage with the senior leadership team and C-level executives because we want to understand where the organization wants to get to. And the vision really sets the tone for the use of data analytics across the entire organization. And it really comes back to what is your why. Like the Simon Sinek book, Start with Why. And this is exactly where we start when we create our vision. So the vision really crystallizes senior executives' own views about the firm's long-term direction, and it reduces that risk of rudderless decision-making by management at all levels throughout the organization. It has to come from the top down. The vision also helps employees within the organization buy into the vision and help make it a reality. You can't do it single-handedly, and you can't force it upon people in a culture. You need to get people to buy into that vision. It needs to be realistic and really resonate with those people that work for you. It provides some sort of a beacon for lower level managers, and it helps them really form departmental goals and objectives, and it helps prepare the organization for the future as well. So setting the vision is one of the things that we do quite early on for those reasons. So to know where you want to go, you need to understand where you are today, and it often helps to look at particular core capabilities. And as part of our data strategy in a box, we've selected 5 core capabilities, and these break down into sub-capabilities within each section. So first of all, we cover strategy, and we look at what the leadership team and the changing communications mechanism looks like within an organization. We move on to operating model, which really looks at the people and processes element. One of the most important pieces of a data strategy and the successful execution is the people itself, and we'll touch on that in a few moments. Next, we look at data management, so archival, how we're treating data. Are we looking after it? Are we archiving it after its valuable life cycle is over or nearing completion? Are we protecting data appropriately? Do we have the right rigor and controls around data and policies to act as guardrails for users who work with data on a day-to-day basis and need to use it and potentially share it as well, internally and externally to the organization? Next, you've got technology and infrastructure. So notice that we covered the strategy and the people and the process elements first before even starting to talk or think about the technology. Often people want to just focus on the technology, but really it's the people and the process and where you want to get to will dictate what technology you should use and if there's any gaps or holes in what you have today. So then we'll start looking at the technology capabilities, and again I'll talk through this in a couple of slides time in a little bit more detail. And finally, reporting analytics, the bit where we're really turning data into information and valuable insights people can make decisions upon and move the business forward. Now, as part of the data strategy in a box, it's really helpful to break down what is often a complex landscape into definitive capabilities and sub-capabilities to make it easier to focus in on each one. And then we look to give it a score. So often people call this a capability maturity model. We do an assessment, and we do that using a number of different tools. The first one is that when we get into an organization and work with a customer, we tend to interview and hold focus interviews or workshops with a broad range of employees. They include C-level executives, heads of data, general managers, people on the ground for the tools, so data engineers, data scientists, and people in support and functions in the business, such as marketing and finance. And the reason we do that is all these people have slightly different views. The thing that's important to the data scientist is going to be different to the person in finance, and similarly the person at the C-level is going to have something different again. By talking to people from across the organization, it gives us a really good insight and perspective and brings a fresh pair of eyes to the situation as well. We may question things that people don't necessarily consider to question if they're more familiar with the environment. So what we end up doing is we end up scoring our capabilities on a range of 1 to 5. This is quite a generic maturity scorer model. We don't necessarily use the same one, although all the approaches are very similar. Your capabilities can be scored on a level from 1, from initial, right the way through to 5, optimizing. And you can have some capabilities which are stronger than others, depending on where the organization is and what access to skills, experience, and technology it has. That's quite natural. And by breaking down the data landscape into core capabilities and sub-capabilities and scoring them, that allows this process to be repeatable. You can run it every 6 to 12 to 18 months. And that's what I referred to earlier by enabling you to demonstrate progress over time by moving capabilities and uplifting them from one level to the next. Quite often, when we work with our customers, they won't want to improve absolutely everything. Sometimes, say, maturity level 3 for particular capabilities, absolutely fine. But also sometimes we'll highlight things that will provoke a healthy discussion around certain capabilities where we see an opportunity, and they also recognize that, and they've got certain use cases that can help raise that maturity level up as well as providing tangible value. And that's the real bottom line here. How can we improve the maturity level of certain capabilities whilst unlocking business value incrementally along the way? So we've set the vision, we've spoken to people across the organization, we've scored the current capabilities as we are today. I mentioned it before and I'll say it again because it is really important. People and the cultural values within an organization are really at the heart of any data strategy transformation. We'll interview people from a broad cross-section across the organization to get a complete holistic view of where things are today. We'll look at the operating model in the organization, and it's really designed with the core objective of simplifying the data delivery processes to bring greater consistency and agility. And often the operating model will identify certain capability groups needed to support a target state data landscape and deliver the known use cases. And to give you an example of what those capability groups might be for your operating model, one capability group could be in charge of providing data. So these are the data engineers and data architects, for example, would fit into that capability group. Another group potentially could be looking after providing operational insights by using AI, ML techniques or data visualization and dashboards, or maybe ad hoc analytics. And they'll be your data scientists, data analysts. And another example of a capability group might be governance and prioritization. So your data stewards, project management and prioritization of particular use cases. A conversation that's recently started is around the data mesh aspects and how potentially you would structure your operating model differently to provide more autonomy and really democratize data across the organization. So there's not a one size fits all in terms of operating model. It very much depends on where an organization wants to get to for their future target state, the competitive landscape they operate in. So how easy is it to attract and retain talent? How much are they prepared to pay to do that? What does the organizational reputation look like? For example, lots of people want to work for Google, Airbnb, and so on. Less people want to work for the small insurer because they perceive it as very conservative. So that all needs to be taken into account to provide a real healthy dose of realism into what's achievable in a particular amount of time. Next, we move on to the technical assessment piece. And this is very much an architecture and design focused stage of the process where we really look at the current state architecture. We identify any gaps in the existing capabilities, highlight any weaknesses, and really crucially what we're looking to do here is identify opportunities which we can exploit in the future state to really increase the maturity in a certain level, but providing an uplifting capability to deliver on use cases which potentially can't be delivered today in the current state. We can then define a target state based upon what the business have told us they need to get to and what that might look like from not only a capability perspective, but also maybe a tooling perspective as well. We can provide a view around that and what initiatives need to be undertaken, and that will form part of our roadmap stage, which is towards the end of our data strategy in a box process, which I'll touch upon shortly. Once you've been through the current state architecture, identify those gaps and opportunities, as well as defining the target or future state vision for the architecture, you may appreciate that there's going to be quite a significant gap to get from current to target state. And typically that wouldn't happen overnight. So what we tend to do is build in transitional states to start to move the customer from where they are today towards that future state, putting stakes in the ground, clear milestones, where we try to unlock business value incrementally, so a proportion of time and money is invested in return for business value, and that business value then is really driven out by high value use cases we've identified throughout the process of interviewing stakeholders and looking under the lid of things within the organization, as well as bringing the current capability assessment scores, taking those into account. We've also developed here an intelligent and market-leading reference architecture with a number of core capabilities in there, which allows us to map the current state onto that to help identify and convey where those gaps and opportunities exist as well. And finally then, after we've spoken to the organization, we've defined the vision, we've defined what good looks like and where we want to go. We've looked at the operating model and proposed a number of options with a recommendation. We've done a technical assessment of where the customer is today and where they want to go. And that naturally will drive out use cases which we can then prioritize and plot on a roadmap where we're really focused on adding business value early on to build confidence and momentum. And earlier on, that's crucially important because it secures buy-in from senior stakeholders, it secures more investment and brings more people in on the journey. And that's exactly what you need to help develop a data and analytics culture and drive innovation and unlock business value. So the data strategy in a box development approach is split over 3 particular phases. The first one where we prepare and assess, and that's all about conducting those focused interviews, assessing the current state and scoring it based on the maturity model I went through, reviewing that current state architecture and identifying the common pain points and areas for opportunity. We'll look at all those different personas and all those different roles, if you like, what different people want and what they can't do today and what their challenges are. In phase 2, we go into a real deep dive design phase where we start defining where the capabilities are lacking from a technical design standpoint, and then defining that target state and transitional architectures, as well as the operating model that we're going to need to support that. And bear in mind that the operating model that you choose to support your existing architecture and transitional states will also evolve and change over time as your maturity changes. We'll also look into a data governance framework, which I didn't necessarily cover today, but I might cover in a later video. And then finally, we look to organize and prioritize all our findings and analysis. This is where we look to identify and really elaborate on those use cases and define what those initiatives look like. We can prioritize those and then sequence those on a roadmap across a short, mid, and long-term horizon. So I hope you find that useful. If this is something that you're interested in for your own organization, the contact details are here. Love to help you, love to have a chat with you. So please reach out and get in touch on the details below.